Do you have any questions before we go home? Isabel? Isabel? Oliver? Anything? Nathan? You're 38? Married? Children? Girlfriend? Boyfriend? Pets? Is there a girlfriend? The pet is the girlfriend. Good job. See? What? What, you can't make fun of life?
No, I'm not making fun of it. It's just you always look over at me when someone else says your type.
Boy, he's like an old man.
What the hell?
What? No, he's almost like 40. I mean, midlife crisis is just around the corner. He'll get rid of his pet, get rid of his girlfriend, probably like move into his van, be depressed. I'm sorry, go ahead. You keep the pet. That's they did the survey some years ago. Men who've been married for like 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And they also had like a dog or a cat or a bird or sorts. Leah. Hello. Leah. Or there, or anywhere. Just not there. Remember, if you need my office, just let me know. And they asked this person, if someone was to break into your house and pull out a gun, and you were forced to choose your wife or your dog to be shot, which one would you choose? 99.9% of the men chose the wife to be shot and the dog to be saved. Now, mind you, these are all like Americans. Anywhere else in the world, we're not pet people, we just eat animals. Cats, dogs, rats, anything you're saying. Lee, are you well? Sorry about yesterday's class. When you're sick, it just throws everything off. Yeah.
What is that from love and selfishness? Motivates selfishness.
Women are interesting. There is this passage, they said, Muhammad said this, but I'm not sure. It's not in the Quran. That, human beings roam around the world, do all sorts of magic tricks to find or to look for paradise. And all that they have to do is to look at a woman. And not just any woman, a woman who's become a mother. And it's so interesting in the sense that here you have this profoundly selfish animal. It's all about her. She wants a Gucci bag, and she wants high heels, and she wants miniskirt, and she wants attention. And then she comes to realize that she's missed her cycle and she's pregnant. I mean, sure, fear aside and doubts aside, and anxiety aside, there comes a point where she has this relationship with the thing that's growing inside her. And what becomes interesting for her, important for her, is the man is secondary now, her husband. And hopefully he's a bit older. She's now looking for stability. She's looking for no longer a 1-bedroom, but a 3-bedroom. She doesn't really much care about being the CEO anymore, at least for that period in time. She doesn't mind being demoted to simply being a mother. And then this thing comes out of her. And she rarely showers because she's always tired. And by rarely, I mean like once, I don't know, every 2 weeks. You know, she hardly sleeps. And if that's not altruism, I don't know what is. You know, they did this test with chimpanzees some years ago that there was this mother holding her chimp, but the bottom of the cage was slowly getting warmer and hotter and then warmer and then hotter. And it came to a point where the gorilla or the chimp could no longer stand and so began jumping up and down to cool off the sole of the feet. At a certain point, she came to realize it's just too much. And then came the breaking point. She put her baby on the bottom of the cage and stood on it, so she herself could survive. And I think altruism, ultimately, it has a certain capacity or limit. And once you're broken, then you go back to just being a very, very natural entity, which is the most important thing in your life is preserving your own life, you know. I mean, if you look at, for example, one of the heroes of humanity, Jesus, and if you chart his life story in the four Gospels, and, you know, they're not completely accurate, but that's besides the point, you have a couple of scenarios, you know, where you find him in the Garden of Gethsemane. And to be walking around and saying to people, you know, I was only born for one purpose, to enlighten people. And that's a huge burden. It means that your focus is simply about giving wisdom to people. It's not about getting married. It's not about making money. It's not about fame and fortune. It's simply about giving other people light. And there comes a point where he says, man, this is just too much work. And it's too heavy of a burden or a cross to carry. And he has a breaking point. And he says, you know, let this cup pass by me. I just don't want to do this anymore. It's too much. He becomes human. And then he catches himself. And that's the problem with altruism versus simply being you, which is, you know, it's kind of like, you know, you're an old man, so you know how this stuff works. You're almost dead. So, you're in love. Right? I mean, you have made all this money and you've saved all this money, but you're willing to sacrifice your money to make your lover happy. Okay? And so you guys have sex. And by this time, you're just like a Don Juan. You just want to have your orgasm and go to sleep. But no, what you really want to do is now make sure that she gets all the pleasure. And if you get zero pleasure, you don't really mind. I mean, by that, I mean if you don't reach climax. She tells you that she'll call you at 6, she doesn't. And you wait and you wait and you wait and you wait, and she calls you at 10. And now you're angry, you're pissed off, you say, why have I given all of me to this woman? And that's the problem with love. Because you relinquish all of your power, and you give this power to another human being, and that human being holds you hostage, you know. And then she calls at 10, and she says, I'm really sorry. You say, sorry for what? You know, I just called you like 4 hours late. Oh, that's not a problem at all. You swallow anger, anxiety, frustration, and you become a Jesus Christ. And then, of course, time enters the relationship. And one of the nice things about time is that it begins to oxidize things. I used to wash cars, and we used to have a detail shop. And so you buy a brand new car, the paint is glossy, it's beautiful, but it's Roseville. You know, the weather, the temperature is like 110, you know. After a couple of years, this red glossy paint, is now gray. So, you know, you take this high-speed buffer, you put some special wax on it, you bring the paint out, you put another special wax on it with a slow buffer, and then the customer comes and says, wow, it's beautiful. 3 weeks pass by and the car comes back and it's the same. oxidation comes about. And you realize we have these moments, all of us in this class, where an event happens and you are more than human and you're willing to sacrifice everything about yourself for your companion or for your child. For those of us who have kids, we'll tell you, loving your kid, easy. Liking your kid, tough. I mean, the moment this kid comes out, you love him. But liking them, they just need to be responsible, showering, cleaning their room, doing assignments, getting a job, not wasting money, not wasting time, not just being stupid, And once you lose your superhuman qualities and you descend into simply being a human, the experience that has now dimmed lives inside you a memory. You've been tainted. You've been contaminated. It's kind of going back to Leah's question yesterday about the Garden of Eden. I mean, when you fall in love, it's like you've entered the Garden of Eden. Everything is there, man. You don't care if she's got like 50,000 pimples. You don't really care. You don't care about anything. All you want is just to be around her, And then time passes and you become human. Once in a while you think back and you say, what the hell happened? I used to write poetry for her. Maybe she'll tell you that, And now you become a tax collector. Everything now becomes transactional, Are you leaving? But you just came in. But chemistry just is such a sucky subject. I know. Okay. Well, keep me posted of things. It's good to see you, Leah. Take care. And so you remember your superhuman powers, but now you're in the cradle of simply being a piece of a shit of a human. Most often, you don't think or you don't remember, you're not aware or conscious of those moments where you were superhuman. So conflict doesn't exist. Once in a while, you walk home, you open the door, you sit on your sofa, and you say, what happened to me? I used to love, and sex was about passion, and the mind and the body and the soul coming together. Now the conflict begins. Your companion comes home, and you want to manufacture a Garden of Eden environment, but, and we can, and that's one of the things that Shakespeare just talked about all the time. You have 1 billion people in India, and then you have one fucking Mahatma Gandhi. You have all these black people, and then you have a Malcolm X. You have all these Jews, and then you have a Jesus Christ. You have all these scientists, and then you have a Newton. It just doesn't make any sense. And Shakespeare argued, why is that about life? That genius or talent gets distributed in such an unfair, unjust way. And then you look at a Malcolm or a Mozart and you say, I want to be like that. But life hasn't given you the talent. And all you have is just this stupid, hollow dream that bugs the hell out of you until the day you die. And I think we all experience that. You catch yourself being a Scrooge. And then you're shocked by the fact that you become altruistic. And it's a heaven and a hell. You have one leg in paradise, you have another leg in hell, and you have no idea who the hell you are. Are you this? Are you that? Are you Jesus Christ? Are you Pontius Pilate? Which one are you? And the truth is, we are both. We are the Jesus Christ who can be the Lamb of God, and you're also the Jesus Christ who is in the Garden of Eden or Garden of Gethsemane, and you're filled with doubt. You're an addict who enjoys alcohol, drugs, sex, video games, and you're this other person who just enjoys being creative, and you want to be free, and it's tough. I think T.S. Eliot had it right. You know, a cat simply sits and just says, I'm a cat. An orange simply sits, if they were conscious, of course, they would say, I'm an orange. Human beings, man, you know, look yourself in the mirror and you say, the hell, what is this? You know. And these days, it's tough, man. I mean, it is tough. You know, one of the nice things that all of us had, for many thousands of years, is that you had a culture that was cohesive in the sense that the culture would just tell you one story. Who are you? You were a winged angel up in paradise. A, B, C, D happened. Your wings were clipped. You descended down here. What's the meaning of life? It is shit all the way through. Veil of tears. For 1,000 years of the Christian era, nobody seeks to be happy down here because that's not the philosophy of life. It's one struggle after another, one misery after another, one death after another. No one desires to find the soulmate. It doesn't exist. No one says, I'm looking for my passion. Are you kidding me? Your passion was lost when you were expelled. And then the culture was torn apart. You have capitalism, industrial revolution. You have farms turning into big cities. Then you were considered normal if you were heterosexual. Then all of a sudden, a few people rose up and said, you know what? I'm gay. And this is not the Roman culture. It's not the Greek culture. This is not Egypt. Talking about ancient. This is America, land of the Puritans. You know, so there is this uprising, and now the culture slowly comes to accept, yes, there is a segment of our community that is gay. Let's try to accept it. But then you have to reorient your philosophy of life. Now you have to look at the New Testament and say, you know what? The gay community has just come out with a brand new New Testament. The parts that Jesus talks about homosexuality and how we should accept, all in red. Never existed, but now you have it. Time passes. Then you have transgender. And then the culture is hemorrhaging now. Then you have to bring about brand new philosophies of life that accepts this particular branch. You know. Then time passes. Non-binary. Then you have to delete a whole host of stories and generate new ones. Then time passes. 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds. They all have to share the same bathroom. The fuck? Ideas are like food. Are you telling me that a 4-year-old is able to digest this new way of being? I mean, look, when a child is born, you give him milk. You mash potatoes and carrots. You don't give him steak. Why do you expect a 7-year-old to walk into a bathroom, a girl, or a 9-year-old? And these days, kids are having their cycles much earlier, young girls. You know, it's embarrassing. You know, how the hell do they deal with that? Why can't you wait till they're 15 or 16 to create this new thing? And the point I'm trying to make is, little by little, you realize, if you want to create anything new in society, you have to get rid of the old ones. And there comes a point where you just have no idea what to believe anymore. Questions that never existed for young people now exist. Am I a he? Am I a she? Am I they? Am I this? Am I that? Am I atheist? Am I Buddhist? Am I this? And so our questions become very, 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 very small. It had nothing to do with your question. Fuck it. Elham, yes. You sure? Am I what?
Are you ready to fast forever?
You're gonna fast?
Or do you fast?
Do you guys know what she's talking about?
Yeah.
Ah, you guys are so educated. So for those of you who may not know, all religious traditions have this philosophy that there comes a point that sometimes throughout your life, sometimes throughout the year, certain seasons, that you should abstain, not eat any food. You know, for some people it's once a week, for some people it's, I don't know, once every 10 years. For the Muslim community, once a year. And you don't eat, drink, put anything in your mouth from the moment the sun comes up to the time the sun goes down. And sometimes in the Middle East, especially in the Arab world, the sun comes up like around 2 in the morning and it sets at 2 in the morning. And so you can't eat anything for 15, 16, 17 hours. Now, for those of you who have ever fasted, a couple of things. If you have ever been addicted to anything, alcohol, drugs, porn, video games, you know that for any addiction to take place, you have to do the same thing over and over and over again. And the only reason you do the same thing over and over again is because it gives you a certain amount of pleasure. If you have some anger towards your father and you begin to cut with a razor, with a knife, with an axe, with a DeWalt saw, what you realize that yes, cutting yourself is painful, but what it does for you is that two pains now begin to compete. And this cutting now overpowers the anger you have and the pain you suffer from the hands of your father. So instead of focusing on the emotions that have been around for the past 20 years, the only thing that has captured your focus now is, I have cut myself, I am bleeding, and it's painful. So you are kind of freed from the bondage of historical emotions for about 5 or 6 minutes or 5, 6 weeks or days or whatever. So you realize that if you want to fast, if you want to abstain from playing video games or watching porn or doing alcohol or drugs, it's really, really, really tough, because you have to get over a lot of emotions, and your brain waves now always geared towards drinking or smoking or watching porn, but now you have to kind of change them, reorient them. And that's a really, really tough thing to do, especially if you have to do this all by yourself and you don't have a support system, which means that you have to bring about the awareness. You have to keep the awareness. You have to support the awareness, nourish it, protect it, make sure it doesn't get demolished. And then hopefully, every time you want to stretch your hand out and grab a bottle or do a smoke, you say, no, I'm fasting, from tobacco or from this or from that. And hello, the only reason you fast is because you say, if you're able to conquer this particular addiction, a Garden of Eden, Sabbath, a promised land is waiting for you, sobriety of sorts. Okay. Now, this is related to physical ills of life, things that kind of obstacle your intellectual growth, emotional growth, spiritual growth maybe. In the religious traditions, they argue that when you wake up in the morning, consider yourself. The moment your eyes opened this morning, you began to worry about the troubles of the day. Got to take a shower, got to get dressed, go through the traffic, get yourself to Laney, take a lousy philosophy class, a guy you don't like, a voice you don't enjoy hearing, ideas you don't really much care for. Then you jump to another class. And you realize that most of your emotions have to do with the troubles of the day. They're physical. You come to this class calm, comfortable, you hear my voice, Comfort is gone, discomfort sets in. Discomfort creates pain. Pain creates frustration. You want to have power to overcome it, but you can't. I hold you hostage in this class for about an hour and 15 minutes, even if you want to drop the class. The idea of you delaying your graduation, that holds you hostage. Fear enters. So you have no choice but to kind of just, suffer the consequences. So in religious traditions, they argue, listen, one of the best ways you can have access, or you can feel intimately, whether or not you have a soul, or whether you want your soul to slowly develop, somehow like a butcher, something needs to happen where your soul is cut from your flesh. How do you do that? Well, taking a shower requires energy. Wearing clothes requires energy. Thinking about classes require energy. All the energy that you have is spent on everyday stuff. How do you cut that? Alexis, hello. How are you? Good, good. Please. Couple of weeks? Look behind you, Jessica. That's Alexis. She has a baby. So, during the fasting month, which the Muslims call Ramazan or Siyam, right? The word Ramazan comes from the word Ramez, and it means a baby camel. And if you look at the life of a camel, you'll see that it lives in the desert. It has the stamina of not sleeping, not eating, not drinking for many, many, many days. And it's symbolic. If you are going to go on a spiritual quest, consider yourself to be a camel, a baby one, a novice one. And life will have nothing to offer you. You will be in the desert. If you've seen the movie The Matrix, where they are in the construct, Morpheus looks at Thomas Anderson. For those of you, of course, who've seen the movie, if you haven't seen the movie, well, go see it. He says, well, what do you think the Matrix looks like? And in the mind of Thomas Anderson, it's beautiful, And then Morpheus kind of says, okay, I'm going to show you what the real world looks like. And it's dark and it's gloomy. Everything is broken. And there is nothing to pursue down here. Now, one of the ways that you could silence the passions and the desires that you and I have for our physical life, and it's worth having, is you have to quiet the passions or the emotions related to physical life. How do you do it? You abstain from eating. And if you don't eat, you don't have energy. And if you don't have energy, what you now have is sum, which means silence. Something about you just quiets down. And if any of in this class have ever fasted, what will happen is this. Little by little, it's like oranges are ripe and they've been on this tree for a while, but once they're ripe, they just fall. When you get to the 4th, 5th, 6th hour of the fasting period, you realize you don't want to stay awake. You don't want to talk to your husband or wife. You don't want to see your kids. All you want to do is sleep. But the world is big. The world is beautiful. It has so many things to offer you. But you don't care, because to care requires energy, and you don't have any of it. Anyways. But there are different kinds of fasting. Some people just don't eat physical food and they just go physically hungry. Some people are a bit more evolved. They say, you know what, I keep thinking about my father, and every time I think about him, anger swallows me. I need to fast from that particular emotion. So you summon up the will to keep your awareness. Every time this emotion comes up, you study it, you examine it, you make sure that it doesn't consume you. You fast from eating that particular emotion. Some people fast intellectually, that you've been addicted to gathering information or knowledge. You think too much, you write too much, and you realize that these have become an obstacle to your growth. And so you say, you know what, in as much as I desire to write, to think, to do this and to do that, I'm not going to do it. And there are urges, you know. And yeah, so so it may be that our good friend here is going to fast. And it may be that our good friend here, let's just say, is addicted to porn. Her task is really, really easy. The sun comes up, you just don't eat. The sun goes down, you eat with 20, 30, 40, 50 people. And as you're eating, you hear the recitation of the Quran, and it's beautiful. But this guy, how do you overcome porn? You've been doing it for all these years. How do you overcome the urges? And you don't have a support system. You're on your own. Eating is something you can see and taste and feel. This urge towards porn, how do you catch it? It's so subtle. It's like Spider-Man. It all of a sudden shows up. Anyways, good luck. Any other questions? Elham, another one. What? You were doing so good.
What's Persian music like?
Oh man. If you watch the second Matrix, you know, where the Merovingian, and for those of you who may not know, Merovingians used to be the secret society following Jesus Christ, but that's for a different day. Morpheus and his clan go to visit him because they're looking for the keymaker. And he speaks to them in French, you know, and he's using all these profanities, but in French. And he says to them, you know, French is like wiping your ass with silk. And that's Persian language. If I was to give you a sample, به کشت خاطرم جز غم نرویه، به باغم جز گل ماتم نرویه، به صحرای دل بی حاصل ما گیاه ناامیدی هم نرویه. You know what that means? You're fucked. That's the difference between Persian and English. English is crude. Persian is also crude, but in a very poetic way. So, Persian music. Before I tell you about the music itself, let me tell you a little bit about the culture. Because music simply is an expression of experiences that the culture has gone through. The Persian world, we can't create Snoop Dogg's. We can't create Taylor Swift's. It doesn't work for us. We are not happy people. We are not happy people because the culture has been, the land, I mean. You know what you have is a piece of land. Its population grows. People create stories to survive on it. And those stories become part of the culture. But the stories are this. The Afghanis come in and demolish the land. The Turks come in and demolish the land. The Muslims come in and demolish the land. Then there is the French. Then there is the English. Then there is the Americans. Every time you have hope, it gets demolished. And then after a while, something really interesting happens to you. You don't trust happiness anymore. And you don't trust life anymore. And all of a sudden, you have a very gloomy picture of life. And it's a very realistic picture of life. They did this survey of people who are depressed versus people who are happy. And they came to the conclusion that depressed people have a more realistic philosophy of life than happy people. You know, I have a neighbor. He's about 80. His wife is 79. Or she's 79. They've had a really, really good marriage. And I don't really know how people have good marriages. You know, it's just, I think most of it is luck. You know, luck in finding the right companion, right? Luck in having the proper temperament.
Tolerance.
I'm sorry?
Tolerance.
Yeah. If you look at most people, they struggle to have a good marriage. These couple, no. They got married young. They're both doctors. They're both teachers. Their financial life is secure. Physical life is secure. I mean, they're getting up there in age, you know. And so you realize that when you've been beaten down over and over again, how do you express the sadness that lives inside you? Because human beings ultimately are expressive animals. You know, I mean, consider some of the people in this classroom. The moment I'm walking, a hand goes up. Well, why is it that your hand goes up? Well, maybe you've read a book, maybe you listened to the radio, maybe you just woke up in a shitty mood. You know, and moods are something we should talk about at some point in this class. You know, and what you have is life puts pressure inside you, man. And you need a valve somewhere where you can open this valve and all the stuff can come out. Otherwise, you'll just die. And one of the ways that we express ourselves is through language, through writing, through music, through dancing, all sorts of different ways. And so music has become, and poetry, an expression of the Persian culture. But the music is sad because life is sad for them. Now, here's the thing you need to know about sadness, Mr. Matthew. Are you doing the azan?
No.
Sadness makes you reflect. Happiness, it makes you forget. باز بانگی از نیستان میرسد غم به داد غم پرستان میرسد. There are some people who worship sadness. Sadness creates pain. Pain creates reflection. Reflection makes you creative. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to create happy philosophy of life. It may be a very sad, tragic one, but it's a one that most people can relate to. I mean, consider the following. I mean, let me name you a couple of very, very sad and awful philosophers. An unexamined life is not worth living. You've heard this from this Greek guy, Socrates. Any of you in this class desire to examine life? Do you know what's going to happen when you examine life? I'll tell you what's going to happen. Some of you in this class found yourself gravitating, say, towards drugs or alcohol or porn. And you were consumed. And when you're consumed, you forget. And you have fun. And it is fun. At a certain moment, and I don't know how this happens, something from within stops you. And you begin to think. Now, thinking usually is a reaction towards certain activities. At a certain point, thinking morphs or changes into introspection. You take it in. It's no longer like tasting something and spitting it out. You take it in and you allow your body to absorb it, digest it. And then you reflect. I keep telling my companion I love them. What exactly is love? Why do I love them? Can you love something you don't know? I mean, human life is unstable and unpredictable. Can love all of a sudden turn into hate? Remember the saying? Hello? You can't build a house on sand. What is love? Now, keep thinking about that. Keep reflecting on that. And the next time your companion comes in and you look at him or her and say, hey, love, something about you will click. I said, love. What is that? And if you keep playing with that, I assure you, your relationship will fall apart. It's not a very happy philosophy of life examination. It looks good on a bumper sticker. As long as it's not practiced. Or how about this by Jesus Christ? Do not store your treasures down here. Our good friend in the back will soon have a child. And all of our focus, all of our energy will be spent on this child. And remember what I said, you can love your kids, but liking them, you're going to have to be around for the next 30, 40, 50 years to see them be accomplished in the right way. You say, not only do I love my kid, I also like them. They went to school, they didn't do drugs or alcohol, they married the right person, they graduated, they have a good job, they saved their money, they bought a nice house, and they got great kids. Now that is like. Or this guy from Nepal, i.e. India. If you're a human being, if you're born, there is only one thing that's waiting for you. Suffering. And if you sit back and think, you realize that there is 8 billion people on this planet. 7 billion, 5 million are religious. And the core philosophy of all these religious traditions, dark messages. We like darkness. It suits us. Because deep down, all of us in this class know that everything about life is tough. Let's move on to something positive. Anyone else? Sure? Okay. It can be negative. I mean, look. Okay. That's fine. Anyone else before? Yes, Elham.
How do you cope with what's happening in Iran right now? Atrocities that are being sending on revolution.
So from what little I know, when we get calls from Iran, my aunts and uncles, the phone call is very, very brief because everybody's paranoid that the phone call is being listened to. And so they simply say, we're okay, everything's fine. Only 50,000 kids have died. Okay. And truckloads of just corpses, bodies, and they have no place to bury them. And so the entire city is bloody, and it just smells of decaying corpse. and then click. That's it. You can simply focus on that, or you can reorient the way you look at this episode and make it a bit bigger. I'll tell you a story before we unpack that. We were sitting having a conversation many years ago back home, and the phone rings. And my uncle picks up the phone and he says, and the person says, you know, we found this guy, he's dead. We just want someone to come to the mortuary and identify the body. You know, can you please come by? He says, okay. So all of us are assuming that it's a cousin or a niece or this or that. And because he was the elder of our community, he goes to the cemetery, to the mortuary, and he looks at the body, and it's his son. Now here's the thing. If you're born into a life, you know, and in the Middle Eastern culture, the moment someone is born, an infant, the elder of your tribe goes to the mother, holds the baby, and whispers passages from the Quran. And if you happen to be Persian, passages from the Quran, as well as some Persian poetry, in the ears of an infant that's only maybe a few hours old. Okay. It's a blessing as a curse, as well as a curse. And it says life is a blessing, but you must also know that it's going to be dark and gloomy. Now, if you're born with that philosophy of life, you're ready for all sorts of nonsense to happen. And you don't whine and you don't cry, because that's how you've been seasoned. I mean, you need to understand the Western culture, it was seasoned up to the 18th century. That you have no right to expect happiness from life because it's not going to be given to you. Life isn't about that. Life is about just hard work. It's a veil of tears. You wake up misery in misery, and you go to sleep in misery, okay? Now, when that philosophy changes, what you realize is that the religion goes out the window. The priests are no longer the ones who live in the church, but now you have the ones who live in the therapist office. And your emotions have no longer anything to do with the bigger aspect of life, but the small aspect of life. My dad, my mom, my job, my spouse, my kids. So your questions become small. Okay? And so instead of taking your questions to the church, you take your questions to the therapist office and maybe the medical field, right? Now, that's wasn't the case for the Persian world for the longest time. The last maybe 30 years, it's very much like the West now. Prescription drugs, alcohol, you know, psychedelics, dancing, partying, you know, therapists. So when my uncle sees his son, he says, God gives and God taketh away. And then for the next 40 days, everybody wears black. He's never left alone. We always go to his house. There's conversation about politics, religion, about death and dying and afterlife. And the 41st day that comes about, he's fine. All the tension and all the frustration that lives inside him about the injustice of life just disappears. I think whenever you're around pain, it does something to you. I mean, if you raise your hand and you say, I'm homeless, sleeping in my van, and I haven't eaten for a few days, now these kids don't care about you. They don't even know you. But if you tell your story in a very emotional, passionate way, every single person in this classroom will lend a hand. That's what we do as human beings. You know, it's something that Jean-Jacques Rousseau talked about, that there is this hidden empathy dormant inside us. In the presence of pain, it just comes to the surface. And then you become altruistic for maybe a minute, maybe for 10 minutes, doesn't really matter. You know, politics is a dirty game. You know, I think if you've in this class, any of in this class who are interested in politics, if you you should read the book written by this man, Niccolo Machiavelli. the prince. You got to be realistic about life, man. You're an old man. You're 34, 31, almost 35. So, look, when you're young, you're just stupid. You fall in love, and love becomes like, I don't know, this world that it creates for you. Time passes and you realize, you got baggage. She's got baggage. You don't have the tools to figure out what the hell to do with all this baggage. Add to it, you want to take her out. You just don't have any money. And you realize, well, money is important. And then you realize, well, shit, you're living in like a house with 5 guys or 5 gals, and there's your girlfriend. And it just doesn't feel very comfortable. And then you realize how important it is for you to kind of have your own place. And the things you never thought about. You thought that love is all that you need. The truth is, love is the least thing that you need. And, then you're kind of smacked by life into reality. Fix your shit. Make sure your companion doesn't have too much shit. Eventually, you need to understand that your shit, whatever they may be, to whatever degree, and her shit, whatever they may be, to whatever degree, you need to have the proper resources, man, proper toolbox. The way you think, the way you hold your emotions, the way you express them. These things need training, especially these days, when no one really knows how to talk about anything the right way, And then you also are slapped into realizing how important money is. But to have money, you need a job. A job, it sucks your soul away. Then you have to be able to kind of have the talent to save money, to spend your money on the right things, which means that you have to kind of ward off temptation. You want to have fun with your friends, but you can't. You want to go on a trip, but you can't. You want to buy this, but you can't. And the truth is, politics is you live in this environment. Look at this, 50, 40 people. You can't make them all happy. I'm a human being, which means what? Whether you like to or not, Tyler, I have biases. I am going to look at your face, and I don't know why, and I don't know how. I gravitate towards you. I like you. Which means that if you have a 77.8, which is a C, I'm going to give you a B+. There's a hierarchy. My likes and dislikes are in play. Now, do I like fairness? Absolutely. Will my humanness allow fairness in play? No. The people who don't talk in this class, who are not very visible, in my eyes, they will remain invisible. I won't even get to know their names. So all of a sudden, if they don't show up, I won't give a shit. If you don't show up, I'm going to Google your name. Figure out where you live. Call your parents. Call Trump and have him call ICE. Come look for you and drag your ass and put it back here in this classroom. That's what it is. So what you have is anyone in power. You think Trump, pocketed almost $2 billion. The people in my country who are the leaders, they've amassed so much fucking money and they've stole so much. That's what happens to people who have power. If I was to make it more personal, I would say it this way. I like being in the classroom. As I'm aging, I like it less and less. And I used to teach about 7, 8, 9, 10 classes a semester, from 8 in the morning all the way till 10 at night. And anyone called and said, we have this extra class, do you want to teach? I say yes. Now my colleagues who don't really understand what passion is would say, well, Amir, just doing it for money. Money I didn't care for. What I cared for is being in the classroom. At this stage in my life, I don't want to be in the classroom. I don't give a shit that much about the money. What I want, if there is a part-time instructor out there and times are tough, money is tight, I rather them teaching these classes. But it took about 25, 30 years for me to no longer be intoxicated with the classroom, with power, with money. And it just takes time. What is happening in Iran happened in Rwanda. It happened in Minneapolis. It happens everywhere. There is this common universal theme. Anyone who gets power, they begin to exploit other people. That's just the name of the game. The only religious figure that I know who created a relative jest in their community was a guy named Muhammad about 1500 years ago. Went to a place called Yathrib and eventually called Medina, which means the city of light. For the first time, Moses only promised a promised land. Muhammad actually created one. And what you have is a political leader and a spiritual leader. Jesus couldn't do it. He was far too passive. He was an introvert. He didn't really much care about the tables and chairs of life. Moses didn't care about the spiritual part of life because he understood the difficulties, complexities of physical life. So when you read the messages, you realize Jesus kind of just says, this particular life down here is not worth pursuing. The kingdom of God is the only thing you should worship. You look at Moses, you say, the first 4 commandments are okay, but the last 6, they're the most important, man. No cheating, no lying, no this, no that. It's all about physical life. And what you have in Muhammad is the unity of both parts. I think deep down, all of us in this class, we have this deep need for justice and fairness. The truth is, you can't find them in human life. It doesn't work. Even if you were to find a human being who embodies those particular qualities, the rest of us wouldn't like it. Look, let's say you've always longed to be free of certain addictions. This is just hypothetical, okay? And you come to my office and you say, okay, Amir, how do I quit A, B, C, D? Well, to quit anything, I have to kind of be mean to you. I have to make you feel bad about what you've been doing for the past 30 years, and I have to make you feel bad about who and what you are. That's the only way you can create fairness and justice inside you if you want health. And the truth is, you don't like to be belittled by me. You don't like me to joke about your life, to make you feel as if you've done nothing with your life. So your only option really is to kind of look at me, give me the middle finger and say, you know what, see you around. I'll see you in the dean's office. And in as much as we desire all these wonderful qualities about life, the truth is I don't think we have the capacity for them. Jessica.
Like what you just said, and also the matrix.
So, is there a question?
No, do you think that the matrix has a question?
I think if you happen to be a little aware, you don't need to be too aware, just a little. There are moments you doubt your relationship. It's only human. And the moment you begin to doubt your relationship, it means that you're watching the matrix. Is it real? Do I really want this? And you will do whatever you possibly can to get rid of that awareness, because that awareness creates doubts, and doubts creates anxiety, and then your future is now a little, murky. You don't really know if you should pursue it, you should pause it. And so very much like what they did to Jesus Christ some 2,000 years ago, crucified him because he was far too aware, you do the same thing to your own awareness. You say, I just don't want to deal with this right now. I want to focus on my math. We do this all the time. And if you just focus on the character in the movie, the main character, which is Thomas Anderson. So he's got 2 names, Thomas A. Anderson. And he also goes by the name Neo. So Neo is one, Neo is light, Neo is being illuminated, being enlightened. That's part of who and what we are. All of us in this class, we have had moments of illumination. And you don't need to be Jesus Christ, and you need to be religious. I mean, the very fact, for example, that one day you wake up and you say, I'm gay. You know, I mean, it means that first you're going against the norms. Your parents are Catholics. You know, they've injected all these hopes and dreams into you. You're going to get married. They're going to have grandkids. You know, you're going to do A, B, C, D for them and they for you. And then you keep tossing and turning. You feel guilty. You feel bad. You think there's something wrong with you. And you wrestle with this for like years until you say, you know what? I am gay. You know I am gay. And then you say, should I tell my dad or should I tell my mom? And man, you take those steps very, very carefully and cautiously because you love your parents and you know the message is going to break their hearts. And it doesn't mean that they haven't intuited a few things about you. But for them, you know, vocalizing it is difficult. Your mom knows, your dad knows, but in bed, they never talk about this. It's too much. You know, so the name Thomas, if you go back to the Christian tradition, it goes back to one of the disciples of Jesus. You know, Jesus says, you know, I'm going to die. I'm going to come back after 3 days. And lo and behold, there is Thomas. There is Jesus on the cross. He dies, falls to the ground, comes back after 3 days. And Thomas says, this is not you. You're like one of those, you know, DD printers. Is that what it's called? 3D printers? Yeah. And he says, no. I'm actually JC. He says, no, you're not JC. You know? And he says, let me touch your wound. He says, fine, you can touch my wound. But blessed are those who believe without seeing and without touching. So there's a part of us that is categorized as a doubter. Should I stay in this class? Should I leave? You know, there's a human part, the intuitive part. Then there is Anderson. Ander, which means human, and son. You put them all together, you have Anderson, son of man who doubts. But then you have the A, alpha, the middle. And alpha is just being sandwiched, crunched, crushed between being human and the doubt. And you know who Morpheus is, right, Jessica? No, you don't. I mean, you do. You have no fucking idea who Morpheus is. Do you know what it takes for someone to show interest in you? I mean, to see potential in you. You know, it's like Yannick Noah, this black French guy. Arthur Ashe was a #1 tennis player. He won the US Open a few times. He just goes to France to do a show on the tennis court. And there is this like 9-year-old kid. And Arthur Ashe says, and Arthur Ashe is black, says to this 9-year-old black kid, okay, well, go ahead, serve. And Yannick Noah, this 9-year-old, aces him. How do you ace the #1 tennis player in the world? You ace him. Arthur Ashe sees potential. He spends money on this kid. Yannick Noah wins the French Open a few years later, and he becomes #1. You know, to have Morpheus to come down and to look around and all of a sudden say, Jessica, I like Jessica. Not for her body, though I may use her body. Not for her emotions, though they are all related to the world. There is a soul, there is this passion lives inside her, but it's under an avalanche of shit. I need to drag that soul out. You know, most of us, nobody really gives a shit about us. We don't have interesting people in our lives. And even if they did, nobody would be interested in us. You know, our lives are far too busy. We're far too superficial. So do not underestimate the character of Morpheus in the movie. This is a man who looks at Thomas Anderson and says, he has alpha. Once in a while, he comes to life. but he also works from metacortex. Society has him, culture has him. But man, he lives in room 101, off, on, off, on, off, on. Should I stay? Should I go? Should I quit? Should I continue? These are the people you're looking for. And Morpheus comes down and tests him. Because Morpheus does not desire to waste his time. And once he passes the test, he's taken up to Nebuchadnezzar, a king who had dreams, where these gods from the Sumerian tradition come down and say to him, Nebuchadnezzar, the temple has simply become a piece of stone. Go, destroy it. Teach people how to worship the real God, not simply the house of God. And that's what he does. It's a great movie. Yes, Elham. Oh yes, I'm sorry. Yes. No, forget her. You go.
In terms of the 40 days that you were speaking about for your uncle, do you think that he's really okay, or do you think that that's just a mask that he has to wear because culturally it's unacceptable to show any, emotions after that period?
I mean, look, one of the things about, and this is what the Stoics told us, Stoicism is, forget all that. So, one of the things about emotions, can I just be very crude? Like very crude? This is just like an experiment. And we're both participants. Ready? Imagine I'm racist. And even though I'm a person of color, I feel like I'm white. So when I come to class, I look at you and say, oh, what is she doing here? And I call you the N-word. Are you going to get upset? Yes. Because the N-word is connected to a history. And that history is alive inside you. And your emotions are going to go upside down. You're going to be pissed off. Okay? And here is the maturity of the culture that you may or may not have. Or it may be part of your Stoic tradition, Stoicism. Pay attention. Emotions are like seasons of the weather. Sometimes they're 100 miles, sometimes they're 2 miles, sometimes there is no wind. If you wait long enough, your emotions will subside. You won't care. Do not give yourself to emotions. And if you do want to give yourself to emotions, maybe a day, maybe 2, maybe 3 days. But what you should know, emotions will always pass. If you create a culture, and if you train people of that culture that don't just give in to your emotions, what you realize is that, is it true that people will express sadness? Yes, but not in a violent way, not in a disrespectful way. And so what you have is this guy, this father, and remember, we don't have a Sigmund Freud yet. And this is the thing you need to understand. The presence of Sigmund Freud and people before him, few decades earlier, this is what we used to be. You're aware? There are certain things about life that you're not going to like, and you're going to keep them in the basement. There is nothing underneath this basement. You don't have anything else. There is no unconscious. All you have is subconscious, something just below your awareness. Okay? You know you're black. You know it's been rough, it's been tough. Okay? But you keep it just below. And just in moments of intense passion and crisis, you bring it up. But for the most part, it remains down here. Okay? During ordinary moments, you are civilized. You are socialized. You belong. You fit. So what you have in regards to, again, certain cultures is that We don't have these hidden intentions. You're sad, your son died. Grief is normal. Loss is normal, it's part of life. Injustice is part of life. Being pissed off is part of life. But you don't keep anything here. Why? First, you have a support system. Second, you talk about it. You have conversations. You don't do drugs. You don't do alcohol. You go to the mosque. And you know what the sermon or the imam talks about? Injustice. And all of a sudden you say, fuck, all the stuff lived inside me. I go to the mosque, I listen to it. I'm free now. I feel light. It's kind of like you're being profoundly sad and you sit somewhere and you cry for 5 hours. And then you realize your body just shuts down and says, God damn it, stop crying. Go back to work. And you kind of just walk into you're very light. I mean, your organism has this intelligence, wisdom to it, that you in fact have the power, if you haven't been profoundly damaged, of course, to kind of express your emotions in a way that's healthy. If you have a culture that hasn't trained you, that doesn't have the proper stories, all you have are just people running around. I mean, look, loneliness has been part of life. Bullying has been part of life. I mean, look at poverty has been part of life. Why is it that in America, you have so many goddamn mass shootings? I mean, you can't tell me that America is more poor than India or the Middle East. And yet, for some strange reason, people are violent here. Why? Because, the culture doesn't give us the proper stories to kind of vent the troubles that live inside us. The only thing that we know is how to be a Rambo. Okay. And so one of the nice things about going back and talking about people like Jesus or Socrates or Malcolm X is that if you're able to kind of embody their philosophy, what will happen to you is you will begin to look at grief through their eyes, not your own, through their eyes. If you were to look at your life through the eyes of Socrates, you're talking about a set of eyes you now have that are about 3,000 years old. The eyes you now have right now, let's say you're 45 years old, it's 45 years old. And let's say you're black, add another, say 200 years to it. Okay, you have 245 years old. That's the only eyes you got. That's the only history you got. If on the other hand, you take the eyes of Malcolm X, now you get Islam. Now you get Christianity. Now you get the prison eyes. Now you get the lynching eyes. Now you get whatever eyes. But at the end, you get the Elijah Muhammad. And then ultimately says, I'm not looking for power. I'm looking for wisdom. Now you got those eyes. Now with the eyes of wisdom, you look at the troubles of life. Yeah, Oliver. Oliver, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What other films do you think speak to your philosophy most? As the Matrix, like?
No, I think there are, look, when you just come out of your mom, you're given milk, then some smashed food, then at a certain point, you realize that your physical body has matured to basically digest anything, which means that any food out there is available to you. Okay. The only task is you put a little bit in your mouth, and then it's instinctual. Your tongue, the taste buds that you have, they have enough intelligence to tell you, is it yuck or is it yum? You don't need Jesus Christ for any of that. Your body will tell you. Just in case your body says yum, you will eat some more of it. I think if intellectually and emotionally you reach that stage of maturity, I think the walls and the windows have the power to speak to you. From every movie that you watch, whether it's porn, I kid you not, whether you want to watch porn or you want to watch Matrix or you want to watch Jesus of Nazareth, it doesn't really matter. You will gain some messages from all three. I mean, V for Vendetta is really good. Rambo, come on, man, it's beautiful. Mission Impossible. Alex Honnold doing solo climb. Amazing. So, have you watched the movie Salt?
No.
Oh man, you gotta watch the movie Salt. Angelina Jolie. I mean, it's a crappy movie. But her face, it's symmetrical. I mean, it's kind of like Pythagoras. Everything lives in harmony. The eyes, the nose, the lips, the cheekbones, the hair. And you find yourself in the presence of Aphrodite, beauty. Now, if you happen to lack the maturity, you say, man, you know, I wonder where can I get one of those so I can do ABCD to her. But the truth is, a bit more evolved approach to it is, man, you know, beauty is so rare. And one of the nice things about physical beauty is that it gives you access to something invisible, magical. So. But you know who she is, right?
Yeah.
And she's organic. She's like, you know, Whole Foods. Kim Kardashian is, you know, she's like Safeway, all processed. So, anyone else before we go home? What was your name? Yeah. Shakira. Anything? You know that song you sang? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm just catching up because my first time was in class was Tuesday.
Yeah.
Tuesday.
Do you think it's true? Hips don't lie? It's a serious question. You've heard the song, right?
I've heard the song.
Oh, what do you think?
I guess her hips don't lie.
But you know, it reminds me something that Plato had said about artists. Oh, are we done?
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
yeah, well, thank you for wasting my time. It's it's good to see all of you. We'll talk about hips on Tuesday. No, it's all good. It's all good. Thank you.